Chapter 121. However, Nash did not care. As long as he started on the path of cultivation, the shortened lifespan would naturally be replenished. After hearing Stellar's words, Felix was deeply moved and walked up to Nash. "Mr. Calcraft, please accept my bow," he said, about to kneel down. Nash quickly helped Felix stay upright, smiling as he said, "Warden, you mustn't. You're a great hero who guards the Northern Territory, and I'm just a commoner. How can I have you kneel before me?" With tears in his eyes, Felix said, "Mr. Calcraft, either you become sworn brothers with me, or you accept my kneeling." Stellar whispered, "Warden, Nash is only in his 20s. He could be younger than your son. Are you really going to swear brotherhood with him?" Felix glared at Stellar. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Stellar kept his mouth shut, not daring to utter another word. Truthfully, he wanted to suggest that the warden adopt Nash as his adopted son. After all, the warden had no children, and after retirement, he would need someone to care for him. Nash scratched his head. "Then, let's just become brothers," he called out with a hand in his heart. "Martial brother Felix." Felix nodded. "Martial brother Nash." Nash did not feel awkward. After all, his two other martial brothers were even older than the warden. Besides, he had spent 20 years of his life helping the warden change his fate. It was not inappropriate to become sworn martial brothers. Felix spoke solemnly. "Stellar, you must give those who died protecting me a grand burial. In addition, posthumously grant them top honors, build monuments in their name, and ensure their families enjoy the benefits entitled to the families of heroes." Stellar nodded lightly. "I'll handle it tomorrow." Hearing the warden's words, both Cillian and Zachariah showed relieved smiles. Every man must die, yet some deaths were greater than others. These people died protecting the warden, which was a great achievement, and they would rest in peace in the afterlife. That night, everyone stayed at the villa. Scotty and Hera chatted all night long. One could not sleep because she had spent the night with the president of Drake Group in Royal Bay. The other one felt energized because of the events of the night. Hera was thrilled to hear that Nash and the warden had become sworn brothers. If her grandfather knew that Nash had important backing like the warden, he would definitely want Nash to marry her immediately. She also wondered when her grandfather would regain his memory. The next day, as soon as dawn broke, Nash called Hera. "Hera, I'm sorry. I was held up last night." Nash apologized to Hera in a hoarse voice. Hera laughed. "I heard about it. Why didn't you tell me about such a big deal?" Nash smiled and said, "I thought it could be dealt with during the day. I didn't expect it to be so tricky." Scotty must have told Hera everything, so he did not explain much. Hera spoke gently. "You must have been very tired last night. Rest well at home today, and don't go anywhere." Nash hummed in response, then asked, "It was thundering all night last night. Did you sleep well?" "I was at Miss Olivia's house, and I even slept with Miss Olivia." Hera spoke softly, trying not to wake Olivia. "Let's talk later. I'd hate to wake up Miss Olivia." Olivia turned over in her sleep, muttering in her dreams, "I don't mind. You can chat as you like." Hera was embarrassed. Miss Olivia, are you awake? Did I wake you up?" Olivia opened her eyes and said with a smile, "Not at all. I woke up a long time ago. I just didn't want to disturb your sleep." Hearing this, Hera smiled sweetly. She suddenly found the president of Drake Group so approachable. Hearing Hera and Olivia's chat, Nash laughed and said, "It's still early. You two can sleep some more. I still have some things to take care of." After hanging up the phone, Nash and the others went out to deal with the bodies. The bodies of all 24 Grandmasters from the Martial Arts Association were laid out together. Along with them were 18 red-robed priests from the National Association of Priests. Usually, these Grandmaster-level practitioners would be held in high esteem. Seeing the familiar faces now turned into cold bodies, Scotty rushed into Father Cillian's arms and started crying. "It's utterly saddening. I feel so devastated." Cillian's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and his muscles became tense. Zachariah pulled Scotty over and said with red eyes, "Silly girl, you're hugging the wrong person." Chapter 122. Felix bowed deeply toward the 2 rows of corpses. "Rest assured, brave heroes, You protected me for a moment. I'll defend the Northern Territory for a lifetime." Stellar, Henderson, and the inspectors all raised their hands in salute. Grant, Joseph, Zachariah, and Scotty also paid their respects with a bow. In the morning, Jade brought a group of high-ranking political figures from Johnford. They solemnly bent over and bowed, paying their respects to these heroic spirits who had died protecting the warden. Cillian, Lloyd, and Nash, however, offered their respects with a hand on their hearts. In fact, these three were very highly regarded in both the martial arts world and the priest community. They did not even need to pay their respects. However, these people died protecting the warden. They were worth honoring. Half an hour later, under the guidance of an ambulance, a hearse from the funeral home slowly drove into the manor. Hospital staff performed the final checks on the deceased, confirming their deaths before the funeral home workers dared to put the bodies into body bags. After dealing with the bodies, Nash prescribed Felix some medication. "Felix, take this medicine according to the prescription and your body should be completely recovered within a month. Eat a balanced diet in the meantime." Due to being tormented by the poison that caused deossification for a long time, Felix was malnourished. Despite being nearly 1.8 meters tall, he probably weighed less than 100 pounds. Felix was not overly polite with Nash and handed the prescription to Stellar. "Nash, I won't say more than necessary. If you ever encounter any difficulties in the future, feel free to look for me." Nash responded with a big grin, "Certainly." After saying goodbye to Felix, Nash went back to Baroque. Felix, having been away from the Northern Territory for too long, was planning to return immediately. 2 hours later, on a private jet, Felix looked out the window at the clouds while deep in thought. Stellar brought a cup of tea and placed it in front of Felix. Sitting across from him, Stellar asked with a smile, "Warden, you seem to have something on your mind?" Felix took a sip from the teacup and said, "I felt a very special air coming from Nash." Stellar was taken aback and said, "Perhaps it's because Nash risked his life to protect you twice, so you feel he can be a true friend in life?" Felix shook his head. "When I first met the smiling Grim Reaper, I already sensed that he should be a man in his 20s. While others may fear the smiling Grim Reaper, I felt a sense of familiarity with him." When Nash appeared before him as the smiling Grim Reaper, only his eyes were visible. Anyone else would not have been able to guess what kind of person the smiling Grim Reaper was. Yet Felix felt as though he had insight into everything just by looking into Nash's eyes. Stellar jokingly said, "He wouldn't happen to be a member of your family, would he? Should we have the Sky family look it up?" Felix frowned slightly. Then he said seriously, "Let's not think about that now. When I return to the Northern Territory this time, let's keep my recovery a secret." Stellar understood the warden's intention and nodded. "I'll definitely find out who poisoned you." In Northgin at the Baroque branch office, Nash was sitting in the security manager's office and twirling a pen in his hand. The image of Felix's wise face appeared unbidden in his mind. Just then, the office doorbell rang. Nash snapped out of his thoughts and said lightly, "Come in." The office door opened, and a voluptuous woman in a professional pencil skirt walked in. Her long legs were encased in thin black stockings, and her black high-heeled shoes clicked on the floor as she walked over. She catwalked toward Nash's desk, her husky voice slightly breathless as she said, "Mr. Calcraft, I've come to give you your work badge." The woman was the Human Resources Manager, Lori Lynch. Chapter 123. Nash had seen Lori once when he was registering his personal information in the HR department. "I didn't expect you to personally come here for such a trivial matter, Miss Lynch." Nash smiled and stood up to greet her. After all, he could not just sit back when a department manager was personally delivering his work ID, right? Ack! As Lori approached Nash, her high heels wavered and she stumbled toward Nash with a surprised cry. He quickly grabbed her arm with his strong hand and asked in a deep voice, "Are you okay?" Lori was a head shorter than him, and her blouse was about to pop open. No, it had already burst open. A button on her white shirt had popped out. Her milky, tender skin quivered slightly. Lori furrowed her brows, giving Nash a pitiful look as she bit her red lip and said, "Mr. Calcraft, I seem to have twisted my ankle." Nash let go of her arm and pointed to the first aid kit hanging on the wall. There's some medicine for that in the first aid kit. Put some on and massage it. You'll be fine. When Lori had fallen toward him, the muscles in one of her legs were noticeably tense. Even if he had not caught her, she could have steadied herself. It was clear that she had intentionally fallen toward him. Either she was sent by Hera to test him, or she had an interest in him. After all, there were not many young and handsome men in the Baroque branch office. With watery eyes, Lori looked at the men resentfully and said, "Mr. Calcraft, can you help me get there?" Nash took the work ID from Lori's hand and then turned to walk toward his office chair. Lori was left standing there, dumbfounded. She had always been confident about her appearance. She thought she could get her hands on this new guy. However, this guy was as clueless as a fool. Just then, Hera walked into the office. Nash. Seeing Lori in Nash's office, Hera was surprised. "Miss Lynch, what are you doing here?" Seeing Hera, Lori quickly said, "I came to deliver Mr. Calcraft's work ID." Hera nodded, then walked up to Nash with a smile. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "You were in a meeting. I didn't want to disturb you. You were supposed to rest at home today. Why did you come to work?" Hera was a little upset. "I had nothing to do, so I thought I'd help you out," Nash said with a light smile. Meanwhile, Lori looked at them in surprise. Her toes in her high heels were awkwardly curled. No wonder Nash got the job of security manager without any work experience. He was Miss Lewis' boyfriend. "Oh my God, I was trying to seduce the CEO's man." Lori blushed and stammered, "Mr. Calcraft, Miss Lewis, I should get going." Hera nodded. "Go ahead. By the way, I've approved the recruitment plan you submitted yesterday. The HR department needs to implement it as soon as possible." "Yes, Miss Lewis," Lori answered, then practically ran out of the office. It was then that Hera turned back to Nash. She squinted her eyes and asked, "Did Miss Lynch come over just to deliver your work ID?" "Why else? You need to be wary of this woman. She's only been in the company for 3 years, but she's already been in 3 relationships." Hera wrinkled her nose, looking a bit worried. Lori had a curvaceous figure and a lot of experience. She was worried Nash could not resist her. "What about you? How many relationships have you been in?" Nash asked, crossing his legs. Chapter 124. "Me? I've been in 10 relationships," Hera said playfully. Nash showed a faint smile. "I almost believed you. A woman who's been in 10 relationships wouldn't have trembled when sleeping with a man." Recalling the scene of sleeping in the same bed with Nash the night before, Hera's face blushed. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Lauren calling. "Hera, how's the implementation of the recruitment plan at the branch?" "I've just approved it. We can start large-scale recruitment tomorrow." "Good. Drake Group has already prepaid a deposit of $1.5 billion. We need to increase production as soon as possible." "I got it already. How's Dad's injury?" Hera asked with concern. "It's just a superficial wound. You don't need to worry. By the way, do you and Nash have any plans tonight? If you're both free, come over to the Lewis family estate for dinner." Let me ask." Hera turned to Nash. "Do you have any plans tonight?" "My mom has invited us for dinner at the Lewis family estate." "I don't. Let's go back together tonight," Nash replied, nodding and smiling. "Mom, Nash and I will be coming over tonight." After a few more pleasantries with Lauren, Hera hung up the phone. Then, she turned to Nash and said, "We've tried several times to have Grandpa drink your herbal medicine, but we were stopped by Uncle's family every time, which is why Grandpa hasn't been able to regain his memory." In fact, she really wanted Grandpa to quickly regain his memory. Only when he regained his memory could Nash have a place in the Lewis household. Nash showed a faint smile. Truth can be covered by lies. They might lie for a while, but can they deceive forever? Hera swung her fist excitedly. "Right. We'll eventually defeat Helena." As the company was about to increase production, the workload was quite heavy. Hera was soon called back to her office by her secretary. Nash, on the other hand, called Theo. Tomorrow was Hera's birthday, and although Hera had postponed it, Nash decided to proceed with the birthday celebration as planned. He intended to ask Theo for a diamond card. Theo agreed without hesitation. In the afternoon, Hera held 8 consecutive meetings. Out of boredom, Nash took a walk around the company. He also checked for potential safety hazards in the company. The white-collar workers in the company all swooned over the handsome Nash. However, when they found out that Nash was the CEO's boyfriend, they all shut their mouths. In the evening, just before the end of the workday, Nash received a delivery. It was a black membership card from Shadow Hotel. The cardholder's name, Nash Calcraft, was cast in pure gold. Was it not supposed to be a diamond card? What was this black card? Nash felt a sense of doubt but did not think much of it and just put the card in his pocket. Looking at the time, it was almost time to get off work soon. Nash did not feel like going back to his office, so he just drove Hera's Maserati to the door to wait for her to get off work. With this spare time, Nash got out of the car and lit a cigarette. At the same time, he took out his phone to call Scotty. Nash, why are you calling me? Tomorrow is Hera's birthday, and Didn't Hera postpone her birthday? My girlfriend's birthday can't be postponed. So what do you want to do? Nash had just hung up when he saw Hera laughing and chatting with a few managers as they walked out. Chapter 125. Wow, is that Miss Lewis' boyfriend? So tall and handsome. They're truly a match made in heaven. What's the use of being handsome? Can one survive on good looks alone? I think only sons from top-tier families are worthy of our Miss Lewis. All of you don't even know about Mr. Calcraft's background. Look at his aura. It's not something ordinary men can have. Maybe he's the son of some big family who simply came out to gain life experience. Alright now, enough. Be safe on the road. Hera rolled her eyes at them and quickly walked toward Nash. At the Lewis family estate, Maria had prepared a large table of food. At the moment, Herman and Kane were playing chess. Kane had already lost 3 rounds. Herman thoughtfully said, Kane, you seem to have been restless these past few days. Is it because of that shooting incident? Huh? Yes. Kane distractedly replied. Ever since he was saved by the masked man that night, he had been worried that the person who ordered him to murder Herman would silence him permanently. Even though the Lewis family estate had increased security by nearly 100 more bodyguards, he still had trouble sleeping and eating. Meanwhile, Lauren was sitting on the sofa, knitting a sweater. Hearing their conversation, she hinted, Hera also encountered an assassination attempt before. These 2 cases must have been orchestrated by the same person behind the scenes. On another sofa, Rooney, who was holding a toy poodle, was immediately unhappy. Lauren, are you suggesting that our family hired people to harm Kane and Hera? Lauren said calmly. I didn't name names. Why are you so anxious? Rooney angrily retorted. With your hinting, it's not different than naming names. First, you said we hired assassins to assassinate Hera, and now you're saying that the same person is probably behind both cases. Isn't this a blatant attack on our family? Lauren's eyes showed a cold light. Are you just upset because I hit the nail on the head? Why you? Enough. Herman slapped the chessboard, causing the chess pieces to scatter everywhere. He coldly looked at the two. You two start arguing the moment you see each other. Do you even have any respect for me? Seeing the old men getting angry, the two finally shut their mouths. Lauren was still very happy in her heart. Although the old man had lost his memory, he was no longer biased toward Hubert's family like he was before. Rooney, however, almost plucked her poodle bald. It was not until the little poodle let out a yelp that she released her chubby hand that was gripping the dog's fur. At this time, Helena came down from upstairs. She was on the phone, exchanging sweet words with Kai. Meanwhile, Nash and Hera also entered the villa from outside. Dad, Mom, Grandpa, Uncle, good evening. Hera greeted sweetly. Uncle, Aunt, all Mr. Lewis's, good evening. Nash followed suit in greeting. Harrison and Lauren smiled in response. Herman and Kane also nodded calmly. As for them not greeting Hubert's family, Herman had long gotten used to it. Before regaining his memory, he did not want to get involved in too many issues between the two families. He did not know who among them was actually deceiving him. At the dinner table, Hera kept serving Nash food, her eyes filled with love and tenderness. Helena watched while feeling both angry and hateful. Although her boyfriend was 100 times better than Nash, Kai rarely spent time with her. Being with Kai, She did not feel like she was in a relationship at all. Hari, how far has the collaboration with Drake Group progressed? When Herman mentioned Drake Group, his tone became much gentler. Harrison quickly responded, Drake Group's $1.5 billion deposit arrived today. The recruitment plans for the parent company and branches have been approved. We expect to start mass hiring tomorrow. In addition, we've decided to add at least 20 production lines to deliver the first batch of chips to Drake Group within 2 months.